On the opposition benches at the moment, that is to say people who've indicated in advance of the debate that they wish to be called, I have Tulip Siddiq, Gavin Robinson, Naz Shah, Tasmina Ahmed Sheikh, Keith Faz, Corey Wilson, Jack Dromey and Gavin Newlands. And on the government benches, I have Paul Scully, Sir Edward Lee, Tom Tugendhat, Victoria Atkins, Steve Double, Lucy Fraser, Philip Davies, Simon Hoare and Kwasi Kwarteng. Those who are not on this list at this point, in other words, those who've not indicated in writing that they wish to speak, may choose to seek to intervene rather than to seek to be called. Paul Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Gale, and I'd like to congratulate the honourable member for Newport West for leading the debate, fellow member of the Petitions Committee. I was keen to participate in this debate, not just for the substance of it, but also to echo the sentiment that the honourable member has said about why we've actually decided to hold this debate today, because it's something that actually has caught the eye of the media, and some people have been concerned about our discussions. We actually have the mechanism in place that anything over 100,000 signatures, we will seek to at least allow the members of the public to have a voice in this place, whether that be through a select committee, whether that be through a wider debate that's already going on, research that we're doing. For example, we're doing things as a committee in looking at research into brain tumours. In this instance, as has been the case in several others instances, it's appropriate for us to give the members of the public a voice in this chamber here in Westminster Hall. Donald Trump's favourite columnist, UK columnist, Katie Hopkins, actually asked on John Pienaar on Sunday, John Pienaar's radio programme on Sunday, why we weren't debating other things like the immigration debate, petition that had gone through and received a number of signatures. And the reason for that, she claimed that it was actually down to us being politically correct. It was nothing of that sort. It was actually that we'd already had an immigration debate, which I led on back in October, which was worded in a very, very similar manner. So it was more appropriate that we actually push on with this, and we don't want to duplicate work wherever possible. Honourable Member for Newport West actually forgot one petition that we should roll up in this. There's one that, as of this morning, 75 people had signed, inviting Donald Trump to address Parliament. So maybe that's an additional one that we might want to consider. Now, the committee, our debate today is not going to result in a vote. It's important that members of the public that are watching this understand that. It's not for us to decide whether Donald Trump should or should not be allowed into this country. That's a matter for the Home Secretary, deciding whether any visit that he may make is conducive to the public good or not. But what it does do is allows us to have our say, and she will, I'm sure, be listening. Now, I know we've had some examples of when people have been excluded from this country. I've heard of a number of cases where people have been excluded for incitement and for hatred. I've never heard of one for stupidity. And I'm not sure that we should be starting now. I think I totally agree that we shouldn't be focusing on one man. What I would like us to do over the next few hours is to look at the issues that have really surrounded this and how they affect the UK. And that's the wider issues really are immigration, global security, the positive contribution that people with Muslim faith have in this country, whether they were born in this country, whether they've come to this country, and added to our economy, to our culture, and to our community. As I said, I led a debate in yeah, please.
On that point, is the honourable member aware that the second most populous petition on the petitions website, with 457,000 signatures, is one to debate stop all immigration and close the UK borders until ISIS is defeated? And does that motion show why it's important to challenge views such as Donald Trump's in a robust, evidence-based and democratic way?
Absolutely. My honourable friend makes a really, really important point. And this was actually, that was a very similar wording to the debate that I led in October. There are a lot of petitions out there that have quite insightful and clumsily worded, in many ways, approaches, because there is a fear of immigration, there is a fear of global security, and I suspect that Donald Trump's words actually were born out of fear himself, although as an aspirant leader he should be leading to clearer understanding of this issue. It's not acceptable for him to just to say, we need to stop immigration of this sort until we understand what's going on. That's not acceptable for an aspirant world leader. We know the benefits of controlled immigration in this country. As a son of someone that was born in Burma, I'm half Anglo-Indian, I've seen the benefits of good immigration, where people contribute to this country, make no claims on social services, that have incredible aspirations for education and for hard work. But mass uncontrolled immigration does actually put a lot of pressure on our services, infrastructure, and it does put a lot of concern into people's minds. And I suspect, as in America, the UK feels this as well, hence the number of signatures to this petition. But we need to tackle it in a very, very different way. We need to speak about the positive contribution to business investment, to science and medical procedures, to culture as well. Many of you know that I actually have quite a bit to do with the British curry industry, with my parliamentary group hat on, and just that one industry alone is worth £3.5 billion to £4 billion, depending on who you speak to this country's economy. It employs 100,000 people, and there are a number of people that are affected by that, and we all enjoy a curry every day, and I think it would be a bad thing to the UK economy if actually that continued to struggle. But that's just one small industry. Let's look at the medical industry. Let's look at let's look at business as a whole as well, and the input that immigrants have on this country. We need to tackle, though, in terms of global security, we need to look at the counter-extremism strategy that this government has, the counter-terrorism strategy that this government has. These are ways that are far more clever, far more positive, and far more practical than an impractical case of just closing the country down to people from one faith. How do you actually determine someone from one faith? Do you actually put a badge on them? Do you have them on a database? I think, although he's not gone quite so far as to put a badge on them, Donald Trump has actually not excluded keeping people on a database, which is an extraordinary situation to go down. So I'll bring my remarks to a close because we're on a very limited time. But I do think that I hope that over the next few hours we'll be able to concentrate on practical ways that this country can tackle immigration and can tackle community cohesion rather than worrying about the ego of one man.
Tulip Siddiq.
Thank you, Mr. Gale. It's a pleasure to serve on the Chairmanship. The arguments about why we're having this debate has already been articulated by the honourable members who came before me. But I wanted to raise the question of why this online petition, which has been signed by 3,000 of my constituents in Hampstead and Kilburn, has evoked such emotion. Is it because Donald Trump's comments mean that he is tarnishing the entire Muslim community with the views of a small group of extremists, the views of whom ordinary Muslims absolutely condemn? Or is it because the world's largest economy might be excluding the world's second largest religious community, over 1.6 billion people in the world? Or is it because people in this country are proud of the long history that we have of welcoming immigrants, welcoming refugees, and welcoming asylum seekers? People often say that the public are apathetic about politics. This online petition, signed by nearly 600,000 people, shows that when people feel a sense of justice, when people feel that we need to stop a poisonous, corrosive man from entering our country, they will act in good conscience. But this is not just any man that we're talking about. This is a man who is extremely high profile, involved in the American show business industry for years and years, a man who is interviewing for the most important job in the world. His words are not comical. His words are not funny. His words are poisonous. They risk inflaming tension between vulnerable communities. And let me make one thing clear. We have legislation in our country to make sure we do not let people enter who are not conducive to the public good. And the Honourable Member for Newport West has outlined some of the people who have been banned by the Home Office for entering this country. I looked up some of the rhetoric. Yes.
You're not talking about, you're talking about a candidate for the presidency of the United States. Isn't it up to the American people to decide whether his views are objectionable, not you guys?
The honourable gentleman has been in the House long enough to know that he has to address through the chair, and I have no view on this whatsoever, as the honourable gentleman will appreciate.
I think the question has been answered for the honourable gentleman. I think the question has been answered for the honourable gentleman. So I looked up the cases which have 84 hate preachers who have not been allowed into the country, and I just wanted to highlight the case of one female blogger, who I won't be naming, but you're welcome to look it up. I had a look at the rhetoric that was used by this female blogger, and she was banned from entering our country. Her crime was that she equated the entire Muslim population with the views of a handful of extremists, and the Home Office spokesperson banned her from coming into our country and said, and I quote, "She is not allowed into the country because we condemn all those whose behaviours and views run counter to our shared values and will not stand for extremism in any form." The views of this female blogger who was stopped from coming to the country and Donald Trump's views that Muslims are all the same are strikingly similar and have very similar resemblance in the words that they use. If legislation is in the country, should it be applied equally to everyone, or are we going to be making exceptions for billionaire politicians, even when their words are clearly falling short of the Home Office guidance? Yes, of course.
I've heard the remarks that Donald Trump's made by a large number of my constituents. She may disagree with them, but lots of my constituents would agree with what Donald Trump said, whether I like that or not. Does she think that they should be expelled from the country as a result of their views? And if not, what's the difference?
I'm afraid the honourable member should think carefully about what he's just said. It's not the same as us making a decision not to let people into the country whose views are falling short of the Home Office guidance. The honourable member for Newport West has already outlined some of the other views that Donald Trump has, whether that's views on Mexicans, whether that's views on black people. It was Donald Trump, don't forget, who ran a dog whistle campaign against Barack Obama's birth certificate to find out whether the President of America was really American. Can you imagine, in the Mother of Parliaments, if my colleagues decided to question ethnic minority MPs about whether they were really British? And let me tell you, yes.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Is she aware that also some of the things that people find repellent about this individual is he's not only racist, but he is homophobic and misogynistic as well?
I thank the honourable member for her intervention, and I'd like to read out what Donald Trump said when asked by Megan Stiles on Fox News. She asked him to explain why he called some women fat pigs, slobs, dogs, and disgusting animals. And Donald Trump replied, "What I say is what I say." Is this the kind of man that we want in our country? The other question I wanted to ask is that I thoroughly anticipate the rebuttal that we cannot exclude people because they merely offend us or because we do not like them. But as politicians, we have to make very difficult decisions. And one of the decisions we have to make is when freedom of speech actually insults public safety, when we are worried about the safety of our constituents. And what the evidence I want to point to is the Centre for Hate and Extremism has pointed out that anti-Muslim hate crimes has increased in line with the rhetoric that Donald Trump has been using in the last 3 months of 2015. And the honourable member for Newport West pointed out about the incident of the Hispanic man who was beaten up by two brothers from South Boston. When they beat this homeless man up, they broke his nose, they urinated on him, and the police report said that he justified it by saying, after I finish my point, justified it by saying Donald Trump was right. We should get rid of all of these illegals. My point is that hate crime is being inflamed and stroked by the words that Donald Trump is using.